All right, everybody. This is Sunil Tulsiani, founder of the Professional Investors Club. I'm here with my great friend, somebody I consider to be my top mentors for almost a decade, and somebody who has helped me grow from once I left the police force about 19 years ago into a entrepreneur, a real estate investor, a speaker, author, and done so many amazing things. Not only is he a great friend and a mentor, but it's somebody that I have partnered up with, somebody that I've written books with. And today, I get a lot of people asking me this question. Sunil, how do I become a multimillionaire in 2024 and beyond? A lot of people have been asking me from all over the world. We're talking about Europe, we're talking about India, we're talking about US, we're talking about Canada, all over the world. And there's really no one else that I know at the level and the credibility who can actually talk about this stuff is my good friend, Brian Tracy. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sunil. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to help people with this subject because this subject preoccupied me for years and years and years until I finally figured it out. And after that, they say Goethe said everything is hard before it's easy, and financial accumulation is very, very hard at the beginning, but it becomes easier and easier, and then it becomes automatic and easy. And that's what your investment club does is it helps people learn the step by step, almost like learning math when you go to school. You have to add and subtract and divide and so on. When I took an MBA in my 30s, I had to learn differential calculus, which was invented by Sir Isaac Newton. It's the most difficult form of mathematics I've ever seen in my life, but I could not pass the courses unless I had differential calculus. Becoming wealthy is like differential calculus. It's you're going to have to learn very complex, but eventually very simple systems to become wealthy. And I'm looking forward to talking about that with you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brian. And I just want to start off with everybody that if you don't know Brian Tracy, I mean, you really need to know him. I mean, we were just talking just before the interview. He used to wash dishes and he becomes a multimillionaire. But along the way, the amazing part about Brian is that he has influenced, trained, helped, coached, mentored, I would say, millions of people all over the world in many, many, many countries to become successful in entrepreneurship, in sales, in personal growth. And some of there's many books, by the way. I think he's writing his 92nd book this year. And that does not include the books that he has compiled with other authors. I'm sure it's more than 100 books. But a couple of books that I want to share with you guys. One is Eat That Frog. It's really, really, really good. If you haven't checked this out, go on Amazon bookstores or wherever you go. The other one I just finished reading is called No Excuses by Brian Tracy. I love this book. Again, check it out. And last book that I'm going to share with you is the book that I wrote with Brian himself. It's called Secret to Wealth. In here, Brian talks about how to maximize your income, and I talk about the 7-step formula on becoming wealthy. So if today it's your goal, if your goal is to become wealthy, you want to become a multimillionaire, pay strict attention to get your pen, get your papers out, because Brian is going to go into strategies, actual strategies. And a lot of people have paid a lot of money to do this. And Brian is doing this because Brian and I are good friends. I look up to him. He's amazing. We are partners. He's attended my events all over the world. And I'm so happy to have you, Brian. Please let us know what people should do. If there's somebody who's starting out, they live in Africa, they live in India, they live in US, they live in Canada, they live in Europe, anywhere in the world, actually, and they
Yes.
becomes financially successful. What should they do?
Well, I began studying this when I was washing dishes and washing floors and washing cars. I thought as a young man when I was 18 that I was going to be washing things for the rest of my life. And then I got a job at a factory, and the job in the factory paid twice as much as washing dishes, and I was amazed. I could earn $1.12 an hour, $1.12, and I was so excited about that. Anyway, I began to ask the question, and it changed my life. Why is it that some people are more successful than others? And the answer is because of their daily habits. And if you start to practice the daily habits of financially successful people, soon you become financially successful. And if you don't, you don't. So here's the basic seven. And I've said to my audiences, how many people here would like to double their income? Everybody raises their hand. I say, well, then let me give you some formulas to double your income over the course of the day. And they say, no, 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 no. We want it now. We want it at the beginning. I say, okay, let me give you one way to double your income. Your income today is determined by how much time you spend with customers. Whether your product or whatever your product or service is, you're an entrepreneur. Whatever your job is, you're in sales of some kind. You're influencing other people to do things that are financially helpful to you. So, how do you double your income? Well, I say the average salesperson, average entrepreneur, talks to two new people each day. Two. And that's the average. Some are above, some are below. I've worked with entrepreneurs who talk to two new people a week, and they can't understand why their business isn't doing well. So let's say that you are the average. Okay, that's good. Most of you are far above that. Then what you do is you simply double your number of conversations with prospective clients from two to four. Now, how many is that? That's one every 2 hours. Can you organize your time so you spend one every 2 hours? Well, here's a basic rule I learned from Peter Drucker. There are no customers in the office. No customers. There's no business in the office. If you're in the office, you're a useless person. You might as well go home and go to bed and pull the covers up over your head because you're not doing anything that generates finances. People who become financially successful think about money all the time. There's a basic rule. It says you become what you think about most of the time. And successful people think about financial success most of the time. Now, what does that mean? Well, the studies show that the average person spends about 1 hour a month reading or talking about finances, and that's usually a bill paying day at the end of the month. We all know what bill paying day is.
Yes.
And the average wealthy person spends 10 hours, 10 hours a month. The average millionaire spends 20 or 30 or 40 a month. Now, how do you do that? You just read 1 hour a day. If you read 1 hour a day, that'll be 5 hours, 6 hours a week. 5 or 6 hours a week is one book. If you read 4 books a month, that's 20 to 25 hours. That will give you an edge that will put you ahead of 80 to 90% of the public. You've got to become an authority. If you want to become a doctor, you've got to study medicine. You want to become a real estate impresario, you've got to study real estate. If you want to become rich, you've got to study money. And so here are the 7 keys that I give to people. I say, number one, goals. And by the way, I have people come up to me all the time and they say these same words. You changed my life. You made me rich. You changed my life. You made me rich. And I always ask, I was at a conference with 2,500 people in Washington last spring, and a man came out of the crowd. He said, you're Brian Tracy. You changed my life. You made me rich. And I asked the same question. What was it about my materials that made you rich? And he beamed like a great Cheshire cat with a huge smile. He said, it was the goals. He said, I never understood goals. I thought they were just something that you had or you didn't have, but you explain goals in such a way. So, number one, you have to have goals. Einstein said that your goals should be so clear that you could explain them to a 6-year-old child, and the 6-year-old could explain it to another 6-year-old, and both would understand. And so, you must have goals that are in writing. I always say this, write it down, write it down, write it down. Because when you write something down, a goal, for example, and you write it in the present tense, I earn this amount of money by this date. I achieve this net worth by this date. When you write a statement like that, It's a command to your subconscious and your superconscious minds, and they begin to work on your goal 24 hours a day. You begin to have ideas. You begin to attract people and circumstances. You read things that you hadn't seen before. You have conversations, and you alert to things. It's astonishing what happens when you program the goals into your head by writing down 10 goals. Take a spiral notebook, and I have spiral notebooks here all the time. Take a spiral notebook like from school and write down 10 goals in the present tense as though they were already a reality. And the next morning, take this spiral notebook, and the first thing you do was you turn to the next page and don't look back. Never look back, and write down your 10 goals again. And every morning, get up and write down your 10 goals without looking back. This exercise alone will make you rich. It's
Okay.
the most amazing thing. I had an entrepreneur come up to me at a conference, and he said, "Brian, I've been following your ideas for the last a few years, and they don't work." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, you said if I followed your ideas, I could increase my income 10 times." He said, "It didn't work. It only took 6 years, not 10 years." I said, "You do it in 10 years." I did it in 6 years. Today, I am earning 10 times what I was earning when I went to your conference by simply following those steps. So step number one is to write down your goals, write down your 10 most important goals, and start doing that every day. If you do it every day for a month, you will develop the habit of writing and rewriting your goals. And I promise you, your whole life will change. It's the most astonishing thing. Sometimes you'll achieve all 10 goals, which were 6 and 9 and 12 month goals. Achieve all 10 goals within the first 30 days. So I would give this exercise to my coaching clients to assure that I didn't have to give them their money back. I had more than 1,000 entrepreneurs in my course over a 7-year period, and all of them doubled their income, tripled their income, increased their income 5 times. So number one is write down your goals and be very specific. Number two is set a deadline. Set a deadline for your goals. Give a date, a specific date that you're going to achieve the goals. And because this acts as a forcing system in your brain, it causes you unconsciously to drive toward the goal. It gives you
Right.
more energy. It wakes you up in the morning. It keeps you going all day long. Number three is make it measurable. Put a number on the goal. A goal without that is not in writing is a wish. And a wish is a goal with no energy behind it. It's like a cartridge in a gun that has no powder in the cartridge. You just shoot blanks. The 80-20 rule works, by the way. 20% of people make 80% of the money. Those 20% and the 80% have to fight and share the 20% among them because there isn't very much left. 80% of people are struggling. Why? It's because they don't have goals. It'd be like going to a foreign country where you cannot read the language on the signs and having no map. You'd be lost most of the time. 80% of the population is lost most of the time, and they don't understand it. And then the worst emotion of all is envy. Envy means that people start to they envy the successful, and they say successful people, oh, they're the rich. They're all crooks. They don't pay their taxes. They cheat everything. It's only when you become rich that you realize that none of that is true. If when you start to envy and be jealous of successful people, you're finished. You're finished because what you do is instead of attracting opportunities, you repel opportunities. People will not help you. Ideas will not come to you. It's a terrible thing. So decide what you want, write it down, set a deadline, a date. People say, well, what if you don't achieve the goal by the deadline? Well, what you do is set a new deadline. When you start setting, all kinds of things can happen. There could be a recession or a depression, or you could break your leg. In other words, just set a new deadline. And number three is make it measurable. Put a number on it so that your subconscious and superconscious mind start to work on it 24 hours a day. Now, step number four is make a list of everything that you can think of to do to achieve the goal. This is very important. Make a list, make a list, make a list, write it down, Write it down. Write it down. Is it hard? Yes, it's hard to be rich. There's nobody going to say, oh, it was easy getting rich. It is so hard you cannot imagine it. It's so hard that 80% of the population don't do it. They start off and they just give up. So therefore, make a list. Say, oh, I can do this and I can do that, and I can do this and I can do that. Write it down, write it down. And over time, you'll think of new things to write on the list. Write them down, write them down. And sometimes your first list won't have anything of use. Your second or third is will have an idea that'll change your life forever. So write it down, write it down. It's interesting. If you want to have big muscles, everybody knows that if you want to have big muscles, you go to the gym and you pump iron, you work out, build the muscles up. You engorge your muscles with blood, and the muscles build capillaries, and you become like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody knows that. To be successful, you've got to pump mental iron. And mental iron is writing down your goals and making plans to achieve them. So that's number four. Number five is organize the list by priority. What's the most important thing you can do? What's the most important skill you can learn? Start associating with other people who have the same goal. When Napoleon Hill did 20 years of research on self-made millionaires in America, he found that every single one of them changed their life and become wealthy when they began to practice the mastermind principle, is they began to get together on a regular basis with other people who are successful. I have a good friend, who's been my partner for years, and he belongs to three mastermind groups. He meets with them once each week. They meet for 2 hours, and they all talk and share ideas. What did you do? I did this, I did that. That's a good idea. How would you handle something like this? And they share ideas. And he's gone from basically nothing to becoming a multimillionaire and living in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in California. Why? Because he keeps associating with people who experience and ideas. One good mastermind can change your life forever. So number five is make a list of everything that you can do, and one of them is to join your organization. That will probably save you 5 to 10 years of becoming financially successful. I mean, I've known you and what you do for years. So number six is take action. Now you've got your list, you've set your priorities, take action. Einstein said that only action is action. He said nothing happens until something moves. Well, nothing happens until someone moves, until you move and take action. And it's astonishing how many people will have this idea of taking action, and then they say, well, before that, I'm going to watch a little television, or I'm going to go drinking with my friends, and so on. Only action is action. And number seven, and this is what's going to make you rich, happy, healthy, successful, and living in a big house. Number seven is do something every day that moves you at least one step towards your most important goal. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Read, study, listen, try, practice, get out there and talk to people. So those are the 7 steps. And if you practice those 7 steps, my promise is that it will transform your life. It'll be like that person in Washington who said, you changed my life, you made me rich. Because he took this formula, which I write about all over the place. He took this formula and he just practiced it. And he said he was just astonished. I mean, his face was beaming. He was so happy that he was rich. He was a millionaire. I've had people who've taken this and gone from average income to millionaire in 1 year. They're just astonished if they keep feeding their mind with these ideas. Read about, the instant millionaire, self-made millionaires, how millionaires, and the work that you and I have done is read it. It'll save you years of your life. So that would be my contribution to this, unless, of course, you want me to talk about increasing your income by doubling your income. That's another 7-step method.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I wanted to say to you is that, you have changed my life financially as well. I've generated millions because of you. And I'm very blessed, even over the COVID period, I've had millionaires, mainly in real estate, part-time, as well as entrepreneurship. They made $1 million within a year during COVID. So I know these principles that you talked about they work. I have a question, Brian. Why don't people actually write goals? Like they know they should be writing it. Why do you think they don't write goals? They go like, I got it in my mind. Why do they don't they do? Why don't they do that?
The answer is that nobody has told them how important it is. You know, I started my speaking career in 1980 teaching people how to change their thinking. And the way that you change your thinking is you write down your goals and you start to think differently. Jim Rohn, wonderful man, he said, becoming a millionaire is not what's important. It's the person you have to become a millionaire. You have to become a totally different person. The number one quality for success for 2,000 years has been self-discipline, self-discipline. And this is the ability to make yourself do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not.
Yes.
80% of the population is waiting until they feel like it. No, no, you've got to get up early and you've got to work hard and you've got to stay later for a long time. Occasionally you have a Mark Zuckerman or Jeff Bezos who become billionaires in less than a decade. But it takes most people until their 50s before they become millionaires. The study in US Report today said that the average family in their 50s, where the head people are in their 50s, is worth more than $1 million, but not their 40s and not their 30s. And why? Because it takes a long time to learn how to earn and keep a lot of money. So if I've got a couple of minutes, I want to teach people how to double their income and double it again and double it again.
Sure. Yes.
Albert Einstein, one of the most brilliant men in history, said that the greatest miracle in the world is compound interest. It's the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. In my book, where I talk about money, I talk about compound interest. And what happens is this is also you can compound your productivity. So this is what you do is step number one, get up early. Step number one, get up early. But millionaires and billionaires, and I have piles of research reports and books that I've written on how to become wealthy. And wealthy people get up before 6 a.m. Set your mental clock. And by the way, you can do this. You don't do an alarm clock. Set your mental clock to get up before 6. What I do is I get up at 5 to 6 and I have it on my clock. I open my eyes, bing, and it's 5:55 on my clock. And so that's what number one, get up early. And lazy people, people with no future, get up at the last possible minute. Successful people get up at 6. Number two is if you exercise, I always get up and exercise to get the blood moving, then read 1 hour each day. As I said before, if you read an hour a day, that'll be one book a week. One book a week will be 50 books a year. The average adult reads one nonfiction book per year. If you read 50 on how to become better and more productive, sometimes that 1 year will change your life forever. Number three is rewrite and rewrite your goals every morning. Write down those 10 goals in your spiral notebook. That what this does is it gets your brain churning and starts to trigger all kinds of ideas. Number four is plan every day in advance. This is so important. Is plan what to do. What you do is at night, at the end of the day, write down a list of everything you have to do the next morning, review the list, and pick the one thing that's more important than anything else that you can do the following day. The next morning, start immediately on your number one task. Don't talk to your friends and don't read the newspaper and don't watch television. Start immediately on your number one task. That is so, so important. And then discipline yourself to keep working on it nonstop until it's complete. And it may take an hour and it may take 6 hours, but you know that you cannot be doing anything more valuable than this because it's your number one task. What is it that most people do? 50% of working time is wasted, according to all the studies, and it's wasted on playing with the computer and talking to your friends and going for lunch and dinner and so on, coming in late, leaving early. No, no, you have to become a different person to become wealthy. Now, by the way, there's a rule. The first $1 million is hard, but the second million is inevitable. Why?
Mm.
And why is that? Because to make the first million, you must transform yourself into a different human being. But now the second million is easy. You just keep doing what you now know what to do to become wealthy. I know that this worked for me. I set a goal when I was young and broke to achieve the wealthy mark. Fortune magazine had an article that said that to be rich, you have to have $10 million. To be super rich, you have to have more than 30. So I said, excuse, excuse me, I set a goal to be rich. And it took a long time. It took until I was over 50, but I made it. I
Yeah.
made it. And then what happens is you have what is called the momentum principle of success. This is one of the great principles is as you move towards your goal, you start to move towards your goal faster and your goal starts to move toward you. The first million is hard. The second million is still hard. The third million is not so hard. The fourth million almost becomes inevitable. And you
Right.
just keep working and they find that most millionaires and multimillionaires got that way without even really thinking about it. Their accountant told them at the end of the year, "Oh, by
Mm.
the way, you know how much you're worth now?" "No, no, how much is it?" "Here it is." Geez, I had no idea because they were so busy doing the things that earn the money. So where we are, number one, decide exactly what you want and write it down and set a deadline and set a number. And number four, make a list. Number five, organize the list by priority. Number six, take action on the most important task and stay out of those. And number seven, do something every day. Now, what happens is that, and I worked this out, compound interest. So let's say that by doing this, which you will, you increase your productivity by 2% per week. 2% per week. Well, that's very easy to do. It's a very small amount. 2% per week is 4% per month. 4% per month is about 25% per year. Now, if you increase your productivity, performance, output, and results by 2% a week by using this formula, 25% a year, the next year, because of compounding, it'll be even faster. It will take you 2 years and 7 months to double your income. And it works for everybody to double your income. Now, if you keep doing this, because of the miracle of compounding, if you keep doing this, you'll double your income again and again. And at 10 years, and at 10 years, you'll increase your income 1,004%. Now,
Wow.
I developed this when I was living in a rented room with rented furniture, and I began to practice it every day, every day, every day, and it worked. I went from earning $14,000 the year I started, and you can always tell how much you earn by your tax returns. Nobody ever cheats on their tax returns and brags, "Oh, I'm earning all this money." No, your tax returns tell the truth. So I watched my tax returns within within 5 years, I was earning $140,000 a year. 14,000 in 5 years, and my income increased 10 times. 5 more years, at the 10-year mark, I was earning $1,400,000 a year on my tax returns. So I increased my income not 10 times, but 100 times in, is that what it is? 100 times? What, no, it's 100 times in 10 years by using this formula. It works like a darn. It's just like the story I told you. People said it doesn't take 10 years. No, because of this law, the law of accelerating acceleration, Sunil. As you get going, you start to move faster toward the goal, and the goal starts to move faster toward you. The hardest part in the world is getting started. Confucius said the journey of 1,000 leagues begins with a single step. It's that first step that the 80% of people don't make. And the first step should be joining your organization and starting to associate with other people who are becoming wealthy doing the things that you're teaching them to do. That will save people 5 and 10 years in getting to the same level financially. So that's my contribution. And I've shared this with more than 5 million people in 84 countries. And my books are now in 55 languages. And people come up to me all over the world and say, you changed my life. You made me rich. I have emails coming every day. Changed my life. You made me rich. And almost always it was the goals or it was the priorities in achieving the goals. Very simple. The greatest truths of mankind are very simple truths. Is you become very good at what you're doing and you do more of it and at a higher level and you become wealthy. And if you don't, you don't. It's black and white. And 80% of people prefer black rather than white. This is what happens if you have a mentor or a coach who is skilled in what you're doing. They can save you years of hard work. Their contribution to your understanding is usually worth 10 times what you pay because I teach them skills of personal management, money, and so on that they hadn't heard before, that are just simply not available. You cannot find them. The people who are writing the books, I have all kinds of books here from people who say, you want to be a millionaire or a jillionaire or a billionaire in 15 minutes and so on. And you look into their background and they're all broke. They're all broke. They don't have any money, but they're telling other people how to earn money. See, what you have done is that you started with nothing. Starting as a police officer, which is a civil servant, a government servant, is not a great foundation, but you've been able to become financially successful by learning and doing all these things. So you can save a person. The most precious thing in life is your life. It's your time. Imagine if you could achieve the same financial level in 5 years rather than in 20 years, or in 1 year rather than in 5 years. That's what coaching and mentoring does. Fortunately now, because I'm 80 years old, I've worked with more than 1,000 large companies doing strategic planning. What I do is I work with thousands of individuals doing individual strategic planning, helping them be clear about their goals, set plans to achieve the goals, set priorities on their plans, and take action every day. And people say, well, this is like a miracle. Yes, it is, because most people don't do it. When I was at 24 and I was struggling as a salesperson, knocking on doors, selling office equipment and office supplies, a top salesman in my company said, he was earning 10 times as much as me. He said, 20% of the salespeople in this business earn 80% of the money. And I said, I never heard that before. Oh, he said, yeah, it's a very common principle. It's called the Pareto principle. And I studied it afterwards because there's books on the subject now. And I said, well, and I still remember the place, time, sidewalk, sunshine, trees, buildings. I still have a picture. I said, well, then I'm going to be in the top 20%.
Nice.
You could be in the top 20 or the bottom 80. And everybody I found starts in the bottom 20, and then they make a decision. The most important part of this time that we spend together is for our listeners to make a decision, make clear decisions about what you want to do and have and be, and write them down and make a list of things that you can do and get busy. Start. Now, one last thing, as Jeff Bezos, became in 2018, starting with almost nothing, he became the richest man in the world. Now he's number 3. There's 2 others ahead of him. But the richest man in the world, think about that. He was a multi-billionaire in less than 10 years because he had this one idea. And what he says, and I read all of his stuff, what he says is that every mistake is a learning experience. And every mistake is loaded with ideas that you can learn from. And the mistakes are inevitable. So you're going to have temporary failures and mistakes. And many millionaires go broke 2 or 3 times. The average millionaire has been broke 2.3 times before they became rich. 2.3 times they went broke or nearly broke. And this is my subject. So therefore, every time you have something that doesn't work, you say, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? I was just coaching with an entrepreneur in Spain yesterday. I said, I want you to take, after your next conference, I want you to, a conference organizer, I said, I want you to write down 20 things that you learned from this conference. Because if you don't write them down, you don't capture them. You don't, and I want you to do at the end of the conference, sit down quietly before you go to bed, write down 20 things that you learn. Don't wait till tomorrow or the next day because it'll start to drift away like cigarette smoke in a big room. What you do is you write them down as soon as the experience is over. I teach people every day, ask yourself, what did I learn today? What would I do more of? What would I do less of? What would I start doing that I'm not doing? What would I stop doing completely? Start, stop, more of, less of, start or stop. That's my formula that I teach. Everybody who practices it doubles their income. So,
Well, this segues to probably the best way to end this, which is you heard this interview. I kind of use this interview. I say interview. It's actually almost like if I had Brian on my stage when Brian, gives you gold basically on how to become wealthy. So what did you learn? Write them down right away. So as this interview ends, let's say you watch this whole interview. Get your piece of paper out, get your pen out, like Brian says, and write down the things that you've learned. And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to take the next steps to become wealthy in 2024 and beyond? Brian, thank you for being here, my friend. I really appreciate you. You're awesome. And thank you for doing what you do for the world.
thank you, Sunil. And thank you for doing what you do. I mean, you actively help people to learn what they need to learn to become millionaires. And as I said before, the first million is hard, but the second million is inevitable.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. All the best. Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye,
my friend.
everybody.
Bye bye.